side we're going to go forward, Mr. Speaker. Why? Because families in Quebec, Mr. Speaker, who are watching us, need a government that's there for them, that's there for dental care, for kids, for seniors, for industry, for Quebec, for Canada. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we'll continue to fight. We will continue to fight every day for all Canadians because the country deserves that we be there to stand up for it, Mr. Speaker. I would invite members to please not take the floor when other members have been recognized by the Speaker. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, everyone knows it. The Prime Minister has lost control. He's lost control of immigration. He's lost control of the cost of housing. He's lost control of his caucus. And finally, he's lost control of public spending. And he's lost the confidence of his Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. The Prime Minister's caused a huge amount of damage for Canada. We know it. Most Canadians know it. But now it's time to say enough. Can the Prime Minister please take his responsibility and call an election today?
I hope so.
The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, the government later today will be presenting its economic plan. It's a solid, and it will continue. Canadians' economic interests are respected. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles.
Where is everybody in my chat?
I can't believe that the Minister believes the words he said. We know that this doesn't make any sense. The Finance Minister quit this morning
because of
this.
There's a guy with like 300 subscribers. He has 7,000 people in his chat.
The Finance Minister said that given the threat that we're facing,
I've got 8K.
the way that we do it, that we deal with that will
as I watch this.
define us for a generation. We know that Canadians are smart.
Debacle.
Will the Prime Minister call an election today? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. It's time, Mr. Speaker, to put that partisanship aside and to rally as Canadians together, because Canada will have to face a protectionist threat from
What does that
the other side of the border. And we are preparing for that, Mr. Speaker. We will have a solid plan, and I hope that we will be able to count on that member and his party when Canada will face that threat. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, what's happening is serious and it's unprecedented. The Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, quit just a few hours before the fall economic statement.
What?
It's just a bomb that's gone off because even in the United States and around the world, people are talking about this, and in a bad way for Canada. That's the reality that we're looking at today, Mr. Speaker. The former Finance Minister said no more than $40 billion of deficit. The Prime Minister pushed her aside to listen to Mark Carney. Will the Minister of Industry please tell us what Mark Carney's deficit will be when it's presented in 2 hours? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I have a huge amount of respect for the member for Louis Saint Laurent. And as my colleague has already said, we will be presenting the fall economic statement later today, Mr. Speaker. A fall economic statement that'll be there for families. It's an economic statement that'll be there for workers, an economic statement that'll be there for industry, but also, Mr. Speaker, an economic statement that'll be important. And we're expecting that the Conservatives will be ready to support it so that we can face the threat from the United States, Mr. Speaker. Canadians expect better than slogans, Mr. Speaker. Canadians expect actions. Will the Conservatives have the courage to defend Canada and to vote with the government to prepare Canada for the future, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard that Liberals are a shiver looking for a spine to crawl up, and we're seeing this play out in real time as they've let postal workers and, in fact, all workers down. At this time, when Canada Post CEOs got bonus after bonus while denying fair wages to its workers, this government continues to betray people and cave to corporate interests. As the former Deputy Prime Minister said, Canadians know when their government is not working for them, but working for themselves. New Democrats know where we stand. We stand up for workers every single day. When will this government do the same?
The Honourable Minister of Labour and for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, Canada went through a 4-week postal strike where letter carriers, who we do thank for their service to Canadians and who I know we all have deep affinity for, were out for a very long time. Not only the government, but the Canada Industrial Relations Board has judged there to be a fundamental impasse in the negotiations. We have found an imaginative way forward, a way to get a collective agreement for Canada Post and its hardworking letter carriers, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Mr. Speaker, they are not listening. The former Deputy Prime Minister said it best today. Canadians know when the government is working for them or for themselves. Well, the Liberals have made it clear where their focus lies. The Minister of Labour's out-of-touch response last week to postal workers is a slap in the face. They deserve safety at work and livable wages. People are tired of the Liberals and Conservatives siding with rich CEOs at their expense. Now Canadians want to know, will the Minister of Labour be the next to resign?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Labour and for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, as that member well knows, postal workers and Canada Post were struggling to find a path forward at the negotiating table. It had gone on for 4 weeks. Canadians were quite rightly, whether they were in Indigenous or remote communities, whether they were small business persons, whether they were people expecting medicines, Mr. Speaker, we were being pressed to act. We found an imaginative way forward with an industrial inquiry commission. We will ensure that Canada Post operates for the holidays, Mr. Speaker, and we're glad that we did.
Good.
The honourable member for Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to talk about something that's on everybody's mind, and that is the Canadian Dental Care Plan. Mr. Speaker, 1 out of 4 Canadians skipped a visit to the dentist because of the cost. But thanks to the Canadian Dental Care Plan, more than 1 million Canadians now receive that care, and every day that number continues to grow. Mr. Speaker, applications for the Canadian Dental Care Plan opened for adults with a valid disability tax credit earlier this year. Can the Minister of Diversity and Inclusion please tell us how persons with disabilities are being helped by this important plan? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister for Diversity and Inclusion.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Dental Care Plan is already saving Canadians an average more than $730 per year. This will help almost 200,000 persons living with disabilities access dental care. Mr. Speaker, we know this is making a huge difference in the lives of people on the ground. We also know, Mr. Speaker, dental care is health care, and we will continue to make sure Canadians are getting the support that they need. Thank you.
The honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
This week, Prime Minister has lost control. Carbon tax Carney wrote the fiscal update, filled it with poison pills, so he could blame the finance minister while pushing her off the fiscal cliff, so he can take her job and eventually the Prime Minister's job. The finance minister figured out the plan, so she resigned in protest. She said she no longer has confidence in this weak Prime Minister and carbon tax Carney's plan. If the Prime Minister's own caucus and cabinet don't have confidence in him, even though the leader of the NDP does, why should Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, in a moment where Canadians are looking for leadership, the Conservative asking the question can only come up with names to lobby towards his political opponents.
Colleagues, it is very important for us to just hear the question and hear the answer. The Honourable Minister, from the start.
From the top. Mr. Speaker, the very best that the Conservatives can offer to this conversation is name-calling, mudslinging, not solutions to the problems that Canadians are facing. When I talk to people at home, they want their governments to be focusing on creating good jobs to make sure people can afford to put food on the table. They want to make sure that governments are advancing policies to invest in healthcare and housing. They want to make sure we're doing more to protect the environment. Every time we put policies on the table to accomplish these ends, the Conservatives throw their hands up in the air, vote against, and just sling mud towards their opponents. That is not what people in my community want. It is not what Canadians deserve. We're going to advance solutions that introduce real and meaningful changes that will benefit people who live in this country.
I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from Dufferin-Caledon, please, to hold off on making comments while the other people have the floor. The Honourable The honourable member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
He's right. After 9 years of that incompetent minister and the Prime Minister, Canadians are looking for leadership. Carbon tax Carney's Canadian comeback fueled a fiscal feud for the former finance minister. Carney wrote the fiscal update, pushed insane inflationary spending, and brought in the 2-month tax trick while trying to blame the finance minister for taking Canada's finances off a cliff. Will he stop passing the blame on to women in his caucus and call a carbon tax election now so common sense Conservatives can give the power back to Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I was wrong before when I said all they had was name calling. Apparently they have alliteration as well. But Mr. Speaker, that is not going to put food on the table for people who need it in my community or his. It is not going to put a roof over the head of people who are vulnerable in this country. Mr. Speaker, if he wants to make this argument about whether women will be supported, I wonder if he has ever approached the leader of the Conservative Party about using hashtags to specifically attract the attention of men who hate women to support him online. I wonder if he's asked questions about why he's canceled the investigation as to who was behind it, or perhaps it's because he knows it was the Conservative leader himself.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, everything is out of control. Home prices have doubled. Food bank use is seeing 2 million users in a single month. And the real fiscal advisor to this Prime Minister wrote the financial update for this afternoon. It included a temporary 2-month tax trick and is set to smash through the massive $40 billion deficit promise that was made by the finance minister. When they tried to blame the economic vandalism on her, she quit, saying that she doesn't have confidence in this Prime Minister. Now, they can't tell us how much they've spent. They can't tell us who's in charge. How can anyone have confidence in this Prime Minister?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives seem to know the cost of everything but the value of nothing. They do not see value in investing in childcare, which has not only reduced costs for families, but led to the largest increase in women's participation in the labor force in the history of this country. They don't seem to believe there is value in investing in social housing, in public housing, in affordable housing, so everyone in this country can have a roof over their head. They don't believe in the value of the Canada Child Benefit, which is ensuring middle-class families in this country can put food on the table. So before he continues to sling mud and arrows on this side of the House, he perhaps should look inward and ask why he is not even allowed to advocate on behalf of his community, because his leader has said that's just not in order.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Yeah, we talk about having confidence. This is coming from a minister who said just today that he's not going to continue to serve in the cabinet of that Prime Minister. Just like the finance minister who said she doesn't have confidence, or the 7 other ministers over there, or the 1 in 5 Liberal MPs who said they don't have confidence in this NDP Liberal Prime Minister who broke housing, who broke immigration, who broke our finances in this country. These Liberals talk about cost, but they have absolutely no idea how much they've spent. No government has ever spent so much to achieve as little as this government has. We know why the NDP leader has confidence in this Prime Minister. It's for his pension. But why should Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague is right about one thing. I did announce this morning that I'm not going to be seeking re-election. But I can tell you, if he thinks that's a matter of confidence, I can tell him it's that I have confidence. I am going to be the best father to my kids that I could possibly be for the rest of my life. And that is what is most important to me. But Mr. Speaker, while I have the floor, I should say thank you for the opportunity to engage in the tete-a-tete over the years. This may be one of the last opportunities that I have, and I want to use it to make this point. Canadians want governments to invest to increase the quality of life that they get to enjoy. We seem not to be able to agree on that basic tenet. On this side of the House, we will put measures in place to support families, not advocate for cuts.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. I would like to quote the Deputy Prime Minister. Canadians know when we're working for them, and they know when we're focusing on ourselves. Mr. Speaker, she's right. 71% of Quebecers believe that the GST vacation and the Prime Minister's cheque are electioneering measures. Democracy loses out as a whole when so many Quebecers believe that a prime minister is trying to buy them off. Will the prime minister finally realize that there is a limit to putting liberal priorities ahead of the common good? The Honourable Minister for Innovation. Mr. Speaker, we have no lessons to learn from the Bloc Québécois. If the Bloc were truly here for Quebecers, they would vote for their best interests. For months, the Bloc is contributing to the Conservative tactics of blocking Parliament to stop bills that would make Quebec a better place. Instead of trying to squabble, can the Bloc finally go beyond squabbles and actually work for Quebecers to allow this Parliament to function? Quebecers expect better from the Bloc, and will always be here on this side of the House to defend Quebecers. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. The Deputy Prime Minister's resignation confirms that the Prime Minister has gone too far in pushing for Liberal measures at all costs. She has confirmed that the Prime Minister is no longer legitimate. He cannot move forward with a full economic update without a finance minister. She confirms that the Prime Minister cannot continue to govern without a new plebiscite from the people. The Deputy Prime Minister has confirmed all of this. Will the Prime Minister finally trigger an election? The Honourable Minister for Labour. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois simply rejects economic updates without having read it. That's why they voted against the Canada childcare benefit. That's why they voted against our dental plan for Canadians. And many Quebecers are benefiting from these programs. They voted against the guaranteed income supplement. They systematically vote against all assistance for Quebecers. So we shouldn't be surprised that the Bloc, once again, is rejecting our measures that will help Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
Carbon tax Carney is the Prime Minister's official economic advisor. His plan was always to push out the Finance Minister and take her place. Let's look at his advice so far. He forced her to bring in the GST tax trick. Carney also forced through insane inflationary spending, smashing through that $40 billion guardrail. Carney's economic plan is so bad, the Finance Minister resigned in protest rather than humiliate herself into reading his homework. Now, nobody knows who the Finance Minister is. Mr. Speaker, enough is enough. Why won't the Prime Minister do the only honourable thing left and let Canadians decide for themselves in a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Another day, another attack against Canadians from
I big time love farts, she says.
Anytime someone steps up,
I love Trudeau farts, she says.
For Canada, what do? Personal attacks, Mr. Speaker.
Oh,
Mr. Speaker,
so personal, you know, they know, I know, she loves farts, I knew it. I have known it,
Regina Capel.
The attacks on this government's economic record are coming from inside the Liberals' own cabinet, Mr. Speaker. And it looks more and more like carbon tax Carney's plan to push out the Prime Minister is working as well, too. For carbon tax Carney, it's always been profits over people. Look at his record. Since he became the top economic advisor to the PM, he's moved his own company's headquarters to New York City. He got caught unethically lobbying the UK government. And his firm Brookfield is now looking for $10 billion in taxpayers' money for a new investment fund, which would be managed by Brookfield, his own company. Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve better than this government in shambles. Why not call a carbon tax election and let Canadians decide for themselves?
Anybody that talks that fast, you never trust them, huh?
Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is the people's house, and in it you should be debating things that are pertinent to the administration of government. But what we hear from the House Leader from the Conservative Party of Canada is a tax on Canadians, Mr. Speaker. The person he is talking about is not a sitting member of Parliament, is not a cabinet minister. It is someone that they are attacking simply because they do not share their vision of Canada. Mr. Speaker, every single Canadian deserves better than what we hear from the opposition today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
The Prime Minister's lost control hours before delivering a fiscal update. The Finance Minister resigned, joining 1/5 of the Liberal caucus and saying she doesn't have confidence in the Prime Minister either. And there's only one person left keeping this Prime Minister in power, and that's the leader of the NDP. The fall budget is scheduled to be tabled in 54 minutes, and we don't even know who the Finance Minister is.
Well,
The Liberals' own cabinet order on succession states if it's not her, it's the Industry Minister, but he says he doesn't want to. So that means it's supposed to go to the disgraced member from Edmonton Centre. The question is, will the other Randy be Canada's next finance minister? And how much is he investing in fraud?
Again, I've asked members to please not do indirectly what they can't do directly by referring to a member by their first name. The Honourable Leader, order. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, all we see from Conservative members of Parliament is personal attacks and mudslinging against Canadians. Mr. Speaker, what we all need to be doing right now is standing united for our country, making sure that we are protecting the Canadian economy, Canadian jobs, and making things a little bit easier for Canadians. We look forward to presenting the fall economic statement later this afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Halifax West.
Speaker, our government takes the safety of children seriously. That's why we put forward a comprehensive plan to bring Canada into the 21st century and change our online world, making it safer for kids and better for all. The Conservatives are blocking the plan and they're standing in the way of a better future for our kids online. Parents want the Online Harms Act. Experts want the Online Harms Act. Can the Minister of Justice explain why C-63 must be passed to keep our kids safe?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, last week I asked for unanimous consent to split the Online Harms Act and advance the child protection measures as soon as possible. Every single party got on board except for the Conservatives. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party said no to forcing the removal of child sexual abuse material from the internet. They said no to Amanda Todd's mother, Carol. They said no to Rehtaeh Parsons' mother and all the other parents who are begging us to act. While Conservative inaction keeps child sexual abuse material online, on this side of the House, the government will continue to fight for victims, parents, and kids to keep them safe.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. The Prime Minister has completely lost the plot. He's lost control of immigration, of our borders, of public finances. He's also lost the confidence of 20 or 40 members of his caucus. He's lost the confidence and trust of his right-hand woman, the former Minister of Finance. The Prime Minister has lost everything. Will he finally let go and trigger an election so that Canadians can take back control of their future? The Honourable Minister for Immigration. For Innovation, rather. Mr. Speaker, I am not a new minister of anything, not immigration or anything else. We have no lessons to learn from the Conservatives. Today, what the government will table is an economic update that will be here to invest in Canadians, invest in industry, invest in our workers. But Mr. Speaker, what we've seen today during question period is deplorable. Canadians who are watching us today expect better from the official opposition. Now is the time to work together, to defend our country, to be ready for the next US administration. It's disappointing to see that the opposition is playing political games on a day like today. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, can't quite believe what I just heard from the Minister for the,
Oh, I can't
well, not the
quite
Minister for
believe it.
Finance,
I
he
think
said
you
no,
had
but the
farted.
Minister for
Did you
Innovation.
hear that,
The
Mr.
Minister is out of
Minister?
control. His former
I
right-hand
borrowed
woman
my trousers. It's
was very striking in
shame.
her letter. We have to preserve our fiscal capacity against the United States that's pursuing a policy of aggressive economic nationalism. We need to recognize the gravity of the moment. The situation is dire. Canadians need to work. So what do we need?
I'm going to have the Minister.
The Honourable Minister for Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker,